I am back here with Patty and his special guest. If you would like to introduce, I don't know if the microphone's going to work, but
I'll just introduce you to my wife, Cherie. She's gonna be my handler today because I kind of fell off the wagon at a local brewery. So she wants me to pull it back in and be my consultant, my legal team, my PR person. Way better than Anthony will ever be for Nick. So if you
yeah.
guys see me go like this at any point during the filming, she pinched my leg, and that's her little safe word to tell me to shut the fuck up.
All right. I'm glad we have our own PR in here today. I was hoping to
Yes.
have some guests, but Mike's at a Detroit Pistons game. Dot said he might show up. We'll see if he shows up in the middle of this. But for now, Patty and I are going to discuss this episode. Mike's supposed to be here next week, though. But all right,
Perfect. Perfect.
Patty, you know how I like to start this. Your best player of the week and your worst player of the week.
Okay, so this was like a mixed bag for me. Actually, um, it's kind of funny because some of the things I've said, and I'm gonna once I kind of paint this picture, I'll pull it in and tell you what I'm thinking. Um, Past couple weeks, I just been like kind of loosely foreshadowing what people would say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Days gave some speech about the cheating and everything else. What about me? What about that? It just didn't happen in that context. But it sounded like Days when I said that. Also, a couple weeks ago, I said Bible Camp or Warzone, and we start the show off with Bible Camp with Deleon talking about the book of Leviticus and the book of Exodus as well. And Deleon, just to let you know, the book of Exodus says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness on their neighbor." And I think you're kind of doing a little bit of that.
Nav called Delian out about being holier than thou. Do you agree with
Yes,
Nav? Do you think everybody's lying and everybody needs to stop saying, "Oh, why is everybody lying?"
I think yes, and you're actually some of these clandestine groups, like the ones that are a little bit in the shadows, like the matriarchy and everything else. This week is actually starting to be exposed a little bit more. Um, like I said last week, the ship is starting to sink. It's not holding as much water. The fabric of the teams are starting to kind of loosely unravel. Um, I think the holier now thing, yeah, was just kind of a jab. This self righteous thing. Nav being who he is, he kind of threw me off with the temper tantrum this week and
Oh,
the
when he
timing.
lost.
Oh yeah, to see that side of Nav was beautiful, almost as beautiful as meeting Leanna's smoke detector last week.
Nav's temper tantrum shows that he is highly competitive, maybe more than he puts off.
Which I do give him an up this week because if last week or last night we're watching an episode where he kind of started spilling the beans and the intricacies of his and Days' group, um, especially with their prearrangement with Days pulling him off the block. So I think Days giving them that nugget of information, and then Nav turning around and selling it to Leanna later on in the show kind of showed that they're branching out, and all alliances, like I said last week, are shit. You know what I mean. So I kind of give Nav the up, and we can go through all the ups and downs at your leisure, sir. But this is what we're
Well,
starting to
who's your
notice.
biggest down this past week?
My biggest
Other
down,
than Mike, I guess, because he's out again.
you know, I actually I wouldn't give Mike a total complete down because that cross examination with Meg and Leanna, those were top notch. You can tell he's going into the legal profession, and his cross examination and his brutality just in that setting where he's just rattling off all the allegations against her and all the sins that she supposedly did against him was kind of brutality that kind of
I
gave
love
me an
it.
up. And his pettiness was next level with me too.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. And I think about this as well. He's up to date on all his vaccinations. I think if I were to play again, I'd need a couple of booster shots to be immune to the bullshit coming on the
You
incoming
might.
on the next seasons, right?
Yes, I think
So
so.
I need a couple of boosters to be all up on the
You do.
variants, and I'll be caught up with Mike.
But who is your biggest down, Patty?
I I want to say for me, Leanna is a down for me as well this week. Her lying, and when you asked me for specifics and the contextual stuff last week, with her ability to kind of twist the truth. I'll say twist the truth, not say lying, because I know she's going to kind of be on the thing. I never lied. Bullshit. But anyways, I'm just going to say that she withheld certain information that would have helped other players further their game as well. And I think her kind of taking the credit and almost being like the Godfather person this week and kind of, and her keeping Alex, which I don't understand that alliance as well, kind of was a down for me with her. But I saw something with Dazed with the competition, with the hand holding the hands over the ears and stuff, and her being able to be within seconds of that 38-minute time thing.
Yeah.
I think she just set her smoke detector alarm on her phone to make it sound like it for every 9.5 minutes, and right before the fourth chirp, that's how it happened.
Maybe that was her strategy. Actually, me
So
and you were
you
discussing
can
that. We didn't
totally
know.
play that off. I think that's a little bit more feasible or plausible than Dave's little his tinfoil hat theory that her son was under the desk tapping her legs every 8.5, 9 minutes or whatever. But there's a lot of downs and a lot of ups. I don't know. You just my brain is just so twisted, so porridge like right now. It's like a big fucking stinky bowl of oatmeal, and all your players this season are in it, and I gotta fucking pick through this shit.
Yeah, I
Some of
know.
them are bananas, some of them are strawberries, some of them are maple syrup, and some of them are dog shit. So if you want to pull me back in, and I'm gonna get that pinch soon, so.
Well, let's circle back to Mike for a second because he came back into the game. You talked about it. He came back in hot. So you like the way he came back in hot, and even though it like kept the target on his back. I mean, he said there's really no reason to not do that because he thinks people are going to lie to him again anyway.
I just want to kind of know just psychically how he knew that, because he gave a reference to me and he said Patty was right about Meg. So he last night, I think on the podcast, he said he didn't watch all but 2 episodes with Leanna last season, but it would have to been a little bit later on in the season to kind of show what my overall feelings about Meg was. So I don't know if those inconsistencies with the language and just the timelines with the podcast and editing kind of threw that off my assessment. But I like how he brought it in as a whole new level of asshole. But unlike me, he didn't have that vengeful spirit card that I had. So
Yeah.
Q kind of leaning up, saying he shouldn't have came so hot, so heavy, right out of the battle back without any ammo or his ability to pull someone down. Which, what the fuck? You didn't even give him a special power to come back on that battle back, and I saw that.
Nope.
They
Had
were
to
like
throw
this
him
time,
back to the
nope.
wolves. He had to go back in and fight the wolves by himself, but didn't really
But
work out for him. But he had a good. I mean, I like the way he came back in, only because I mean it was messy and good TV, but also
so
because he was
yeah,
right. Everybody was just going to lie to him again anyway.
and I get so excited, and I'm going to try to interrupt you, but his ability to masterfully triangulate the asshole thing, he was like inside that triangle, just hitting bullseye every time. Like he's able to push people's buttons like I can. He's able to say the right things or the wrong things that can further his game. He's able to, and there was I want to say like a linear timeline to kind of dumb it down. He went from kiss my ring to kissing others people's asses to kiss my fucking ass in that last episode before I got
Yeah.
eliminated. So there's 3 different phases of ass kissing and ring kissing in his game, and just to kind of see that fall apart, it takes a master to pull off what he did and say the things he said without breaking character. I would have probably laughed a couple times or at least smirked, but his ability to pull that off was top notch.
Did you like his conversation with Meg?
I think it was uncomfortable for Meg. There's the chats that she left crying, or she probably had some kind of mental breakdown with crying. I like her little retort with, I already have 2 kids, I don't need another. I think once you start to put Meg's game up on the focal or the foreground, she kind of falls apart and gets a little sticky there, and that's where her glue starts to fall out apart. But once you call out Meg, she starts to get all kinds of sloppy, and she'll come back hot and heavy. But I think she kind of reeled it in this week and just basically made it look like he had this mental breakdown moment, and she was good to go. What do you think? Yeah, she's just nodding since and
So far, no pinching.
no, she'll bump me when I remember stuff, but that conversation that I had with Meg was somewhat reminiscent with maybe something I had with her in the past when she wanted to do the alliance with me to kind of save her ass, and last season to kind of see that fall apart with Mike and Dazed as well, with Dazed and Busters. I think though they read into the alliance a little bit heavier than she did. You can pitch an alliance, their prospective alliance, but the way the conversations were going this season tactically and the way they were talking wouldn't suggest to me that this is something that would align into a final three. Because there's a lot of final three talks, there's a lot of number two talks these past couple of weeks. I just don't think they were doing all the patchwork and doing all the
No,
stuff
they weren't.
necessary to have a strong alliance that is kind of a little off the radar as well.
And I don't
with
I
Dazed
don't
and
honestly
Busters.
think Mike was as heavy in that as he was laying into Meg about, because during his HOH he was having doubts about Meg himself. So I mean,
I think, yeah, and literally that was him just throwing her under the bus, just saying we had this agreement. That
yeah.
this wasn't anything that was solidified. Like I can't even get butthurt about that because that there was no like bloodletting or any kind of blood oath between the three of them to kind of push this forward. It was just casual banter that maybe further the game, and just throw that out there and manifest it and see where it lies later on. But I don't think it had the glue to justify Mike's tirade with her.
How did you feel about Day's plan to like try and get Mike on the block, and then that made Mike try and go at Leanna? What do you think went wrong with that plan?
With Days doing that, that drew a little bit more attention to him than I would want on my end right now. Um, Days Days' name was mentioned by several cast members this week, and this kind of threw a radar. His smirking, his inability to hold his poker face during these incremental chats this past week, him smirking, people picking up on that, his use in tone and his language also kind of suggested that he had something else up his sleeve where he could have did this way more. I don't even want to say professionally, but more hitman like, where he could have just went like this, brushed off his cufflinks, and just said instead of
Just
that.
his poker face.
Yeah, that was just so far fetched, such a big sale, just hand caught in the cookie jar look that most people can't come back from, and most people will notice.
And they did notice.
And I think too as well, this will draw more attention on Days because I think that Deleon and even Leanna was asking questions with Nav, and I think Days winning an HOH this week and him having this target on his back at the same time is only going to amplify things that are going to probably follow the following week, especially if Days makes a big power move, which he was leaning towards calling Meg out with busting up Days and Busters. So I'm thinking he's going to do some kind of retaliatory thing towards Meg, maybe towards Deleon as well, since Deleon kind of was fucking with him in the backside.
Yeah, Days did need that HOH though, because I mean,
he did this week.
He put this big target on his back trying to save Mike.
And and you're starting to see this point in the season where everybody is being more vocal about how they feel about each other, and you doing the highest votes competition with the HOH last night kind of also solidified what other people were thinking about their fellow castmates, and you put it out in the open where it's on paper. It looks good on paper, but you spill a cup of coffee or shit on that paper, it's not always going to necessarily work out the same way you want it to.
Yeah, that game, it's always messy. Everybody takes that game to heart usually. When
I would have too. And it's a big self-awareness thing too. It's like then you finally kind of figure out how these people really feel about you. They can say they can start with a clean slate, then all of a sudden these little jabs, these little you pick their wounds and you pour salt and lemon juice on it. I think that was a beautiful thing last night to kind of move things forward and kind of expose how people actually feel about each other.
Let's talk about the matriarchy, because they've been the one of the main alliances, if not the main alliance. This week, messy again. What were your thoughts on Didi not wanting to listen to Liana and Meg and wanting to play her own game, not wanting to use the veto if she won it?
There's so many layers of this onion because I think the matriarchy, even though they're quiet and even though they're doing things in the shadows, was enough to raise the vibration for at least Vanguard to kind of pick up on it and him to kind of like say, "Oh, I wonder if there's some kind of women's matriarchy or some kind of women's alliance." He's definitely on the right page there, and to see that shock in Mike's face last night during the podcast when almost I don't want to say shock, but when he discovered that the matriarchy was there in season, and he was kind of revisiting those thoughts. But I think they're starting to lose that glue, and with Liana kind of doing the spite, she's going to say it's not spiteful, but for her to put D on the block after she was so vocal about not using the power of veto if she were to win it, I think that was more a retaliatory thing. And she even said, I believe, that she's going to sing like a songbird and start exposing all these little
Which
things
she
that are
did. I
going
mean,
on
she
within the game.
exposed the women's alliance to Days and Nav.
Yeah, and which is this going to gain steam? Because even suspecting it or whatever, it's going to be. It's so many layers of this onion. It's confusing to me. Like, huh?
It's falling apart.
It's falling apart. My wife's like they're sloppy, and for us to even notice this, and we discuss their strategies all the time. It's just, I think they're by them upsetting D. There's going to be some kind of dealings to take on later on.
Yeah, and Dee and Leanna were arguing in the chat too. In Leanna's mind, she's saying she put up Didi because she knew Didi would be a vote for Mike no matter what. But Didi's saying that she could have just threw up Aspen or somebody else. Because I mean, the
Or
vote
Alex, yeah.
it was close between Didi and Mike, and Mike only went home because Monet used her power.
That's true, and also, I just think the way this went down, with Liana and Didi and Mike, but with her putting D up this week was reminiscent of the first week when Dot and Alex were put up as well. You have this crossfire, this collateral damage where, Leanna could come back later on, even if the vote D fell on the wrong side of the vote and she got voted out instead of Mike. She could have said, I didn't know that happened. This was like almost insulation for her. Even if D went, I think Leanna still wanted D to kind of go, but Mike was the bigger target. And that was her way to insulate herself if either target went home this week. And just still look like the good person, still look like the truthful person, because when she was getting caught up in those separate group chats, she had to keep her own story because she was talking to so many people so rapidly in rapid succession that she couldn't lie to one person and have that other person, her risk telling someone else within those groups with the HOH picks, because I think this time around she had to literally stick to everything she said. She just didn't want to be caught up in a messy HOH this week.
Although it was still...
Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. And I want to give like Monet and Aspen like an up this week. They were so far under the radar. Meg last week said she forgot she's even playing with Nav. Nav is so forgettable in this point in the season. I think for a lot of us this week, Monet and Aspen were the forgettable players in this week's series.
I think they were both trying to right their wrongs from the past. Aspen especially, she's been so messy. Although she voted messy once again, so we'll see if she can stay under the radar.
But how can she right her wrongs? Like those big glasses, the way she does the shit with her face, she can't contain it. It's if somebody says something that pulls her trigger so far left, she's like Days this week. She can't control. Or she can't act her way out of that. So I want to see more people start picking up on that,
Yeah.
Start telling the truth.
Yeah, my wife said she needs to start telling the truth.
Yeah, she does. And Q said she's a terrible liar, and it's not wrong.
Don't hide it.
And my wife's like, don't hide it. It's just going to come back and bite you, basically, in the finish, just like it does every one of us.
How did you feel about the vote in general? Like, did anybody surprise you with their vote? You said you were wanting a closer vote, and we had a tie vote. So
I sincerely felt terrible for Dee. That's a bad position to be in, especially when you think you're in a good spot, and Leanna just throws you up because you're vocal. I think it was smart for Leanna and Monet because even Q said Monet is kind of responsible for Mike going home this week as well. I think for Leanna to unleash that beast and have him go just total savage on everybody and just rile the house up. I think for her to actually finally put this animal down was smart for her. And then this is where I think I would have fucked up because this guy comes back from a battle back. Let's give him a week of rest, a week of reprieve. But in this point in the game, you cannot do that because that will fuck your game up shortly thereafter. There's always going to be something coming back on you, especially if you give somebody a rest that has that much bad blood with you and your groups.
I will say for Mike also that he might have went home again, but I do feel like him being so at everybody, I think it helped make a lot of these cracks that have really formed this week. There's been a lot of tension because of Mike, and some people are cracking under the pressure, I would say.
Yeah, Mike is that photographer that just basically caught everybody with their pants down this week. Sort of like what I did when I was the Vengeful Spirit, and I told everybody to confess their sins. So in a roundabout way, Mike almost did the same thing, not as dramatic as I did, not with the white fucking mask, but he was able to pull through and almost have these people, whether they overtly or covertly say it, whether they beat around the bush or just go straight at the heart. He had that way of uncovering and bringing out a lot of the shows, a lot of the secret alliances, a lot of his cryptid talk with Days. I took care of it, and everybody's like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
So him even casting doubt further amongst the other team players, even though he was eliminated, I think that was a brilliant move on his behalf. I also love the fact that even though it was a hard sell for me as well with Dot this week, him saying that Meg is, Meg may have not voted you out, but she had something to do with it. I would have just said, Meg's in trouble. She's trying to figure out what happened with you. I would have leaned it more towards Dot's ego than try to beat Dot's ego down. To make even Dot try harder. Give me a better competition instead of picking every fucking category in sports and liberal arts or whatever the fuck he went with this week.
I want to circle back to your mask wearing real quick. While we have your wife here, I might as well ask the questions that we all want to know. Does Patty do random shit like wear these masks at home?
So, all you cocksuckers who think I'm playing extra in real life or on set, and I'm not like this in real life, oh, you better bet your fucking everything in your bank account that I'm like this all the time, every day.
I figured as much. I figured as much.
And me and my wife treat every day like it's Christmas, every day like it's her birthday. She said we just try to. So, when I go hard like this in the game, like I do it because there's no money at stake. Everybody's like, why would he play not to win? I'm just like, I take trophies in other ways. And like I said in that podcast I did a while back, we lead a strategically boring life. But when I play this game, it kind of just brings some of those demons out that have just needed some dust off their shoulders and all that other stuff. And my wife can attest to that. She has no reason to lie for me. And I'll also tell you too, if I was lying,
I can't lie.
she said, I just like Leanna, Meg, and Aspen,
Genuinely,
I cannot lie.
I can't lie.
So she would be the first person to call me out right now if I was bullshitting you or capping or being sus or whatever the fuck these young kids say nowadays. She would call me out, and you'd see me do the jump.
Let's touch upon Alex. We haven't talked about Alex this week. How did you feel like Alex played this week? I mean, he was complaining that we're not giving him enough ups. Do you think Alex was up this week?
He's so. And for him to go from, I'll be the cushion every week. I'll be that permanent pawn in everybody's game. For him to say that so strongly against Dot so early in the game and fall so far out of the foreground with it and not use it is just wackadoodle to me. He's done a really good he's done a really good way of just digging in like an Alabama tick, I guess. That's almost like Jesse Ventura, what he said, Predator, right? So he's dug in like a tick. He's playing all these different alliances. He's on the right side of the votes. He's
He was on the
smoking.
wrong side this week,
Yeah,
technically.
but are they calling him on it though?
No, I mean,
Not so far, not so far. And you know, I still don't understand why Leanna thinks he would have went home. I think Nav was on it too when he said that there was no attention really towards Alex this week, and for Leanna to assert so strongly that it was Alex's week to go home. I just think that was Leanna's way of saying, Alex, I got you under my thumb now, bitch. And
you think that's her plan?
well, Alex even said she thinks I'm on her side for now. Or we'll have her think this particular way for the time being. Something that just I believe he said in one of his confessionals. Let her think long enough.
Do you think Leanna's going to be continuing to play this like you call it a drug cartel type game?
And she is the one who is the cartel dealer. She is the one who's calling out all these hits. She's the one who's taking all the credit for it, and nobody's even speaking up for it, which is
like,
kind of crazy for me.
But I will say, like, Leanna doesn't mind winning these HOHs, where I feel like a lot of people are afraid to win HOHs and be empowered.
Well, this after Days is done with this HOH thing, it's time for other people not to be scared anymore because it's leaning so far in this direction with Leanna taking these HOHs and being these power movers in these elimination games and the power of veto. Her little charade thing and being on top of it, even though it didn't work out 100% for her, she is doing a lot of the dirt in this game that some of the people are taking credit for. And they're all followers, and I don't like. There's this ongoing joke that Leanna is being scared or she doesn't play scared, but it seems like they're all playing into her game. They're listening to her. She is the general in this case. You know, I know a few weeks ago I said maybe Meg's the CFO and Leanna's just the muscle. She's muscling through this and she doesn't have a problem being vocal about it. But you know, she's saying she's not playing scared. If I was truly not playing scared, I wouldn't even be saying anything to anybody. I would just be asking questions like an HOH should, and see what they think and get like the pulse. Put your fingerprints on the pulse to see where they're leaning, and not even fucking tell anybody what you're gonna do. That's what I would do if I wasn't playing scared.
I kind of feel like with her renom, she doesn't tell anybody what she's going to do with her renoms. First with Dot and now with Didi.
You and Q are banging out the strategies and everything else, and I feel like I need to come in with a little bit of strategy and more diagnosis with the social game, but I am always wrong. So
well, let's talk about social game if you want to talk about social game. Whose social game stands out the most? As in
whose social game stands out the most? Who do you think, Leigh?
Let me think.
Okay. Well, while she thinks, I think I'm thinking Leanna's doing well, Meg's doing well, even though she's a little shady. Alex is doing very well. It seems like all the deceptive people who are aligning in this juncture in the game are kind of very good at what they do and just kind of tossing around things and causing people.
Why do you think
flip-flop.
that's
working? Because everybody wants to say they're operating on a clean slate. Everybody wants to say they trust everybody, and they're just reverting back to the norm. So I think everybody's leaning more towards chaos. They want the chaos, so it kind of draws the attention away from them. And the more chaos you have, the more smoke and mirrors you have, and the one who's the loudest and fucks it up the most. Even Meg said, "Don't fuck up this vote." I think that was just something to throw on Aspen this week too, you know. Yeah. So, you know, Meg has this way of throwing the blame on other people during conversations. She'll, you know, like you have two siblings getting yelled at by the parents, one for breaking the window and, well, Mom, he took your car and your cigarettes last week, so let's bring out the one who did the bigger sins and just ride with it, right?
Well, no, I was going to ask you the real hard-hitting question of the week.
Yeah.
Is Fan Guy washed up?
No, he's not, and I don't think so.
Why don't you think so?
Because there's so many spokes to the wheel here. You know, I even asked my wife the same thing last night. She's like, "You can't play the way you do," And if Dot's on the podcast this week, don't get in an argument with him.
Well, he's not showing up, I don't think. But
Obviously, this is going to be a one-sided argument, so we can carry this on another week. But I don't think he's washed up. If he's using the same logic, I would think everybody in that game with the cast of returnees, everybody who has studied the other people, even though those who say they have not, you know, there's a certain degree of predictability in this game. You can almost tell how someone will act if they get thrown off cue. You can tell how somebody will react when they're confronted with being a liar. There's certain people who walk out of an interview if it's too aggressive, sort of like how Mike and Meg did, the breaking down. You have someone who with a strong personality who comes back from a battle back. It will show who breaks down under pressure. It will show who the ants are, the drone bees, and who the chiefs are versus everything else here. You know what I mean? So,
It's our first instinct.
pardon me?
It's our first instinct.
It's all their instinct coming through, and they don't have the ability to lie through it. And this is where me and my wife pay attention to their social skills and how they react with their body language and everything else. So
you think Fan Guy is still in it with his social game?
He's charismatic. He knows a lot of these games inside out. He can switch strategies. I just think somebody who is a formidable foe, like say Mike, or someone else who knows his game and knows the ins and outs and the strategy is the same. Yes, they'd be washed out, but everybody's calling everybody a spade this season, but nobody's doing anything about it. They know what they all do. They know what they do when they're good. They know what they do when they're bad. They know what they do when they're washed up. So it's recognition. I just don't know if that was Mike's way of just saying, fuck you on the way out. Because that's what I would have said.
I think it was, but
yeah. The worst thing you can think about someone is that they're washed up or they don't have any surprises up their sleeves. And my wife said, you can't play the game you played in the past, but I don't know if I'm capable of doing that. Hence her sitting here next to me, going to pinch me if I shoot my mouth off.
You might have to have her off to the side with a pincher if you're like playing the game next time.
We will get a 150 volt or 1,000 volt taser, I think, one of these times. You will see me get zapped on camera and froth at the mouth and shit my pants at some point, just like I do on game.
Well, lastly, Patty, do you have any predictions? Days is the new HOH.
Okay, so this is what I think. Me and my wife were just discussing this at lunch earlier too. I think Days is gonna put maybe Meg and I'm gonna say Meg and maybe DeLeon this week. That's what I'm gonna say.
Who do you think his target is?
Whose Days' target is?
Yeah.
I think he has a few on his radar. I think Meg being one of them. It's just Days prioritizing. Like I would go after Liana too, if I was Days in his position. But this upcoming week, he's going to have to assess the benefits, the cost benefit type analysis, where he's going to say, if I make this power move on somebody, how is this going to affect my game moving forward? Is this going to have any blowback with if I hit somebody on the Women's Alliance or the Matriarchy, even though I think he kind of chirped about that as well. Or he kind of leaned towards it. I don't think he came out forthright with it, but I think he's going to have to prioritize his targets and see who his biggest threat is. I would say Liana and Meg at this point would be some of his biggest threats. DeLeon, secondary threat. And a couple other people maybe who are chirping. I'd still be worried about Fan Guy as well, and Nav.
I mean, do you think, because Didi told Days and Nav about the Matriarchy, do you think that will matter to Days now?
I think there's going to be some loyalty there, but I don't think he can do much with it at this point because the numbers are so. It's going to take some number playing, and because they're leaning heavier towards the women's vote anyway, right, versus the males at this point.
I think it's now tied 5-5.
So it's tied. I don't know. With all the webs they're spinning, we have Liana and Alex, you have Meg and, Days and all those other guys. The secondary alliances and these little back alley type things are kind of really super hard to read this season. You You don't-
There's so many. Everything's very fluid, as they've been saying in the comments. The game is very fluid when it comes to the alliances.
it's I think it's part fluidity. I also think it's pettiness as well, because it's like, there's a certain degree of fluidity with these players, but no matter how well you think you planned your strategy, there's always some back alley, some side porch type thing, like you said. You never know really, with a certain extent, of where your alliances lie at this point. It's just, you might as well just draw their names out of a hat this week. You can see where it's leaning in certain directions, but you might as well just be drawing names out of the hat and seeing where these people are going to attack each other. This is how unpredictable it is. We kind of knew Mike was going home, but there was also a possibility of D going home this week.
Yeah, there really
So-
was. He almost would have without Monet's powers. So
And I just, 2-time collateral damage this season with no battle back chances, I just think that would have left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. I personally don't want to work with Leanna like that anymore. At this point, I think they just need to start paying attention more to what they're saying. If they're speaking in terms that are future prone, or more, I want to say, just more succinct, I think that's what they need to pay attention to, especially with these alliances. So if you're speaking in future terms with the people you're having these chats with, it's probably a go that you're going to survive another week. But if you're being cut off, the body language is kind of weird, and they're not answering questions like you would want them to, or they're kind of throwing it back on you. This is where you can see the intricacies and where it's leaning, I think, this time around. Because it's getting hard for them, more difficult for them to hide their body language, and all these rocks being thrown at each other. It's kind of hard to deny something when you got 3 or 4 people saying it at the same time.
and the emotions are just rising more and more.
Yeah, and I keep saying every week, I am so grateful, Nick, I didn't play this season. It's way better to be a Monday morning. It's way easier to be a Monday morning quarterback and watch everybody else do what you would probably be doing in this situation. Isn't there any point in the season where you just scratch your head and you're like, what the fuck?
There's many points in this season when I do that.
'Cause-
I did that for the first week when Leanna put up Dot. I was like, okay, well, this is gonna be a wild season.
Well, yeah, you're right, and I can't even come back from that. It's DeLeon's picking up. He's showing up for work. There's so many ups and downs this week. I don't even know where to begin, honestly.
Well, Patty, I guess that is all for this week. Mike says he's going to join us next week, so hopefully, Dot, I don't know, but maybe one day.
I thank you for this time, Nick. It's just like you guys are like really been nailing down the strategical stuff, this week, and just discussing the strategies and everybody else's gameplay ad nauseum. And it's interesting from my perspective to see it from a social, like a micro versus macro social experiment. And these motherfuckers ain't changing at all. It's just, you're all washed up. You're all washed up, especially when we're playing ahead of you. You're all fucking washed up. I'm washed up.
Everybody always says they're coming in with clean slates, but they never even have slates. They just come back playing the same games with the same feelings.
And poor Mike, think about this. It always sucks to be the first to go. Think about that. That will never be ever scrubbed out of Dot's ego.
No, it won't.
My wife just said you can't teach old dogs new tricks. That's
can't.
true, especially with these returnees. But
we
Nick,
are all getting older, sadly.
and with me going with Nick the second week and saying they ain't gonna let Nick make it to the finals, I don't know if Mike's ego's hurt more that he was eliminated right after the most abysmal player of the season, or he was just more hurt that he felt betrayed. To be those first 3 eliminated, there's such just a different bag of emotions that they have to process, and I'm so glad it's not me.
All right, Patty. Well, I will end it there for this week.
All right, thanks for your time. I don't feel like
Thank
we
you.
accomplished much, but it was fun to watch. Thank you, and you can watch. You guys can watch in a couple weeks when some of the stuff I say this week will happen in 2 weeks, and you can just say Patty's Nostradamus like I have done.